June 7, 1944. Shortly after dawn, at a heavily guarded headquarters near Paris, General Leo Geyr von Schweppenburg stood over the operations map spread across his table. The pins marking his panzer divisions formed a pattern he had designed himself, a calculated gamble against Allied air superiority. His colleague Erwin Rommel had warned him, daylight movement was suicide. Geyr disagreed. The sky, he believed, would prove who was right. Panzer Lehr Division was moving from Chartres. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend was advancing from Lisieux, led by SS Brigade Führer Fritz, with Kurt Meyer commanding the spearhead regiment. The 21st Panzer Division was already engaged near Caen. Other armored units were converging from across France under Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt's overall command structure. On paper, it looked like a hammer about to fall. The Allies had landed in Normandy just 24 hours earlier during Operation Overlord. Their beachheads were still shallow, still vulnerable, still within reach of a concentrated armored blow. If Geyr's panzers could reach the coast by nightfall on June 8th, they might still throw the invasion back into the English Channel. General Leo Geyr von Schweppenburg commanded Panzer Group West, Germany's strategic armored reserve in France. 4 decades in uniform had taught him one lesson above all others: strike fast, strike hard before the enemy consolidates. He had studied the invasion problem carefully. The first 48 to 72 hours would be critical. During that window, a concentrated panzer thrust might split the Allied beaches, just as German armor had done at Dunkirk in 1940. On the morning of June 7th, Geyr had every reason for confidence. Panzer Lehr and the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend were already rolling toward Normandy. The hammer was rising. What Geyr did not yet understand was that the roads themselves had become a battlefield, and on that battlefield his panzers had already lost. The reports began arriving shortly after 9 o'clock. At first, they seemed routine. Scattered mentions of air attacks along the approach routes, a fuel convoy hit near Alençon, a column delayed by cratered roads south of Falaise, damage from the transportation plan, the systematic Allied bombing campaign that had shattered French railway networks in the weeks before D-Day. These were the expected frictions of war, the minor setbacks that every military operation encounters. Geyr's staff logged the reports and updated the situation map. The overall picture still looked favorable. Panzer Lehr was making progress toward its assembly area. The 12th SS was advancing toward Caen. Other units were in motion across the French road network. But as the morning progressed, the pattern in the reports began to change. General Fritz Bayerlein, commanding Panzer Lehr Division, reported that his fuel trucks had been destroyed by fighter bombers near Argentan. Without fuel, his tanks had halted in an orchard, waiting for resupply that might never come. A 12th SS communications officer reported that his signals vehicles had been caught on an open road and burned by RAF Typhoons. 3 staff cars destroyed, 6 men killed, the regimental command net temporarily silenced. By noon, the individual incidents had become a flood. Column attacked near Thury Harcourt, 14 vehicles destroyed by P-47 Thunderbolts. An ammunition convoy hit outside flares, explosions continuing for 20 minutes as shells cooked off in burning trucks. Tank transporters caught on the Falaise road, 5 Panther tanks lost before they could even reach the battlefield. What Geyr could not see from his headquarters near Paris was the machine the Allies had built above the roads of France. By June 1944, the Western Allies controlled an air force of staggering size and sophistication.
The American 8th and 9th Air Forces, combined with the British Royal Air Force, could put thousands of aircraft into the sky over France on any given day. The weapon of choice was the fighter bomber. The American P-47 Thunderbolt was a beast of an aircraft, 7 tons of engine, armor, and firepower, capable of carrying 2,000 pounds of bombs or 8 rockets, while still retaining the agility to fight other planes. The British Hawker Typhoon was equally fearsome. Armed with RP-3 rockets, each capable of penetrating the armor of most German vehicles, the Typhoon had been specifically optimized for destroying armored columns and strongpoints.
But the aircraft were only part of the system. The transportation plan had methodically destroyed French railways, bridges, and road junctions. In May 1944 alone, Allied bombers had dropped tens of thousands of tons of explosives on rail yards from Paris to the English Channel. The goal was simple. When the invasion came, German divisions would find their railways broken and their roads funneled into predictable routes that Allied aircraft could patrol with deadly efficiency. Then, for the invasion itself, the Allies deployed something Geyr had never faced: real-time tactical control, linking aircraft to ground forces through close air support networks. Mobile radar stations tracked aircraft across the battle area. Ground control centers maintained radio contact with fighter-bomber squadrons, directing them toward fresh targets. The entire system was bound together by radio networks and standardized procedures. The result was a network that functioned almost like a living organism. A German column would begin moving on a French road. Within minutes, a reconnaissance aircraft would report its location. Controllers would vector the nearest fighter bombers toward the target. P-47s or RAF Typhoons would dive out of the sky, release their rockets, and climb away before the Germans could organize effective anti-aircraft fire. On June 7th alone, the P-47s of the 9th Air Force flew over 2,000 fighter-bomber sorties in support of the Normandy landings. The RAF Typhoons added hundreds more. Every major road within 100 kilometers of the beaches was under continuous patrol from first light until darkness fell. Geyr's panzer divisions were not advancing into battle. They were advancing into a trap. By 3 in the afternoon on June 7th, the reports reaching Panzer Group West headquarters had become impossible to ignore. Panzer Lehr Division, the elite formation Geyr was counting on to spearhead the counterattack, was bleeding on the roads south of Caen. General Bayerlein had nearly died that morning. His command car had been strafed by P-47 Thunderbolts while crossing an open stretch of road near Argenton. He survived only by throwing himself into a ditch as machine gun bullets stitched patterns in the earth around him. When he emerged, his car was burning and 2 of his staff officers were dead. The tanks themselves often survived individual attacks. A P-4 or a Panther could absorb machine gun fire, and bombs had to strike close to destroy such heavily armored vehicles. But tanks cannot fight without fuel. They cannot fight without ammunition. They cannot fight without the infantry and artillery that made them part of a combined arms formation. Bayerlein's war diary, recovered after the war, recorded the scale of destruction. In a single day's march, Panzer Lehr lost over 80 vehicles to air attack. Most were soft-skinned transports and fuel trucks, but the losses included 5 tanks destroyed before they ever saw an enemy ground unit. His division was being dismembered on the march.
The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend fared no better. Kurt Meyer's spearhead regiment, pushing toward Caen from the east, was caught on open roads in the afternoon sunlight. RAF Typhoons, armed with RP-3 rockets, descended on the young soldiers with methodical precision. Veterans who had survived years on the Eastern Front found themselves helpless against an enemy they could not shoot back at. At Panzer Group West headquarters, Geyr's staff tried to maintain order. They rerouted columns onto secondary roads. They ordered movement restricted to dawn and dusk. They requested Luftwaffe fighter cover to protect the approaching panzers. Those requests went unanswered. The Luftwaffe, gutted by months of attrition over the Reich, could not contest Allied air superiority over France. Geyr faced a situation his training had not prepared him to address. His divisions were still nominally moving toward Normandy, but the reality had become a nightmare of burning vehicles, scattered units, and broken communications. The counterattack he had planned was not going to happen on June 8th, perhaps not on June 9th, perhaps never. Then, on June 10th, 3 days after the invasion, ultra-intelligence from Bletchley Park located Panzer Group West headquarters near the village of Lekain, southwest of Caen. Radio intercepts and reconnaissance had identified the concentration of vehicles and communications equipment. Shortly before 7 in the evening, 17 RAF Typhoons fired 136 RP-3 rockets from 2,000 feet. Minutes later, 61 Mitchell bombers released over 500 bombs from 12,000 feet. The attack was saturated. General Major Alfred Gauss, the Chief of Staff, and 17 other officers were killed. Most had been at dinner in the chateau when the sirens sounded. They had walked outside to watch the Typhoons through binoculars, not realizing they were the target. Maps and plans were scattered or burned. Geyr himself was seriously wounded by shrapnel as he tried to reach shelter. The attack on Lekain destroyed Panzer Group West as a functioning headquarters. Command and control of German armored operations in Normandy devolved to improvised arrangements. Geyr was evacuated to a hospital and eventually relieved of command. The Battle of Normandy continued for 2 more months. The Panzer divisions savaged on the roads of June 7th continued to resist with grim determination. Panzer Lehr fought fierce tank battles around Villers-Bocage. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend contested every hedgerow near Caen. The Wehrmacht made the liberation of France a bloody, grinding struggle. But none of it changed the fundamental equation established in those first 24 hours. The window for reversing Operation Overlord had closed within a single day, not because of what happened on Omaha Beach, but because of what happened on the roads leading to it. When we ask what decided the fate of D-Day, the answer may lie in the burning convoy scattered across the French countryside. The Allied soldiers who stormed the beaches deserve their place in history, but so do the pilots flying P-47 Thunderbolts and Hawker Typhoons, the controllers directing close air support, the radar operators tracking every German column, and the code breakers at Bletchley Park, who together built a system that destroyed Germany's armored reserve before it could even fight. Rommel had been right about Allied air power. The sky belonged to the Allies, and with it, everything beneath.